There's this place way out on the edge of the world. For centuries, it was known for one thing, its incredible, beautiful isolation. But now, suddenly, it's become the center of pretty much everyone's attention. So today, let's unpack what we're calling the Greenland Pivot.
So, you gotta ask, why now? What's the sudden obsession? How did the world's largest island go from a remote outpost to a non-negotiable strategic asset? Well, the whole story. It comes down to a really fascinating paradox.
And here it is. Greenland is basically caught in this massive tug-of-war between accessibility and admissibility. See, on one hand, it's never, ever been easier to physically get there. But on the other hand, legally, it's about to become one of the toughest places on the planet to actually get in.
Okay, so let's tackle the first half of that puzzle, the new Arctic crossroads. For literally decades, Greenland's greatest defense, and let's be honest, its biggest economic headache, was just how incredibly isolated it was. I mean, getting there was a whole ordeal. Expensive, took days, but that whole era, it's over. And I mean dramatically over.
Just look at the scale of this change. That new 2,200-meter runway, it isn't just a little bit longer. No, this is a total game changer. For the first time ever, big, wide-body jets, we're talking an Airbus A330neo, can land directly in the capital, Nuuk. This one piece of concrete has completely rewired how the entire island connects to the rest of the world.
Let that number sink in for a second. 4 hours. That's it. That's the new flight time, direct from New York to Nuuk. I mean, that makes it about as easy to get to as Houston is from New York. The whole barrier of distance, it's just gone, evaporated.
And you can see the whole story right here on this new flight map. All of a sudden, boom, United Airlines is flying direct from Newark. Icelandair, they've massively ramped up their flights, plugging Nuuk into their entire transatlantic network. That old clunky way of getting there through a bunch of smaller airports, it's a thing of the past. Nuuk is now, officially, a hub on the North Atlantic map.
All right, so the physical doors are swinging wide open. But let's be real. You don't spend billions on runways just for tourism. And that brings us to part 2 of the story, the great power game. We're talking about a high-stakes, geopolitical chessboard for control of the Arctic.
This timeline here lays it all out. It's like a perfect storm. You've got these 3 huge forces all crashing into each other. First, you see the massive infrastructure build-out. Then the geopolitical pressure just ratcheting up from the US and its allies. And finally, you have Greenland's own defensive response, all the new rules. And they all slam together right here at what we're calling the 2026 pivot point. This is the moment that completely changes how we value Greenland's strategic importance. To really get what's happening, you have to look at why each player's at the table. For the US, it's basically a 21st century version of the Monroe Doctrine. They're saying, hey, this is our strategic backyard, and we're not letting our rivals set up shop here. For Denmark and the EU, it's all about shoring up NATO's northern flank, and of course, getting access to those crucial raw materials. And then, you've got China. They're kind of the ghost at the feast. Their earlier attempts to invest got blocked, but their ambition for a polar Silk Road is the real driver here. It's what's making the West so urgent about locking this place down.
And this quote right here, it just nails the financial side of things. All this competition creates what you could call a safety premium. This isn't your typical frontier market, not at all. It's more like a strategic choke point. Think Djibouti or Singapore. Places where major powers are willing to pay way over the odds for stability and access, mainly just to keep their rivals out. And that willingness to overpay, it basically creates a price floor for any strategic asset in Greenland.
Which brings us right to part 3, building the legal fortress. Because in response to all this new attention, Greenland has put up a pretty formidable legal wall. And these new rules kicked in on January 1st, 2026.
Now, to get your head around these new rules, you first have to understand a really core concept there. In Greenland, you don't actually own land in the way we might think. It's all held in common by the community. So you can own a building, the actual bricks and mortar, but for the ground it sits on, you just hold a right of use. It's a deeply rooted cultural and legal thing.
So here's how that actually plays out. An investor, say, owns the physical building. But to get that all-important right of use for the land underneath, you now need 2 keys to unlock it. The local town council, the municipality, they have to sign off on the zoning. But now, and this is the big change, the national government has to approve you, the owner, and decide if you're even eligible.
So how do they decide if you're eligible?
Well, for any foreign individual who isn't Danish, they've brought in this super strict 2+2 rule. Here's what it means. You have to prove you've been a permanent resident there for at least 2 continuous years. And you have to have been paying your full share of taxes in Greenland for that same 2-year period. This basically puts an end to anyone just buying a property from afar as a pure speculation.
And it's not just about individuals. Nope. For companies, there's a whole new law called the Investment Screening Act. The easiest way to think about it is like a traffic light. If your investment is in the green lane, you're good to go. But if you're trying to invest in a red lane sector, think critical infrastructure, mining for rare minerals, defense stuff, you now need to get mandatory approval from the government before you can even think about closing the deal.
And here's the number that really changes the whole equation. 25%. If a foreign entity tries to buy a stake of 25% or more in one of these sensitive companies, it automatically triggers a full national security review. This gives the government a massive veto power to just say no to any investment they think is a risk.
Okay, so let's put it all together. The physical doors are open, but a huge legal moat has just been dug around the castle. And that brings us to our final section. How do you invest inside that moat? Because the opportunity is still there, it hasn't just vanished. But the rules of the game, they've completely changed.
I mean, this is the whole pivot right here. In a nutshell, the old game was all about logistics. The biggest challenge was just figuring out how to get there. The new game, it's all about access. Now the biggest hurdle is navigating this really complex web of legal and security rules. The main barrier has literally shifted from the physical world to the legal one.
And you know, for the people who are already on the inside of that moat, simple economics makes their position even stronger. Just look at these cost increases in a single year. Electricity is up more than 16%. Painting materials, up over 10%. Wood products are up almost 10%. Building anything new is just insanely expensive, and that creates what's called a high replacement cost, which basically just supports and even boosts the value of all the buildings that are already there.
So what's the new playbook? How do you operate in this new reality?
Well, it really boils down to 3 key things. First, you have to partner up. The only real way in now is through joint ventures with local Greenlandic or Danish partners who are already eligible. Second, you got to prove your value. Your investment has to show a real, tangible benefit to Greenlandic society. And third, you have to be patient. This is a place for long-term, strategic, patient capital, not for people trying to make a quick buck.
And all of this leads us to one last big question. The Arctic is opening up, there's no doubt about it. But as Greenland is making crystal clear, just because you can get there doesn't mean you're allowed in. So as this whole new chapter unfolds, the real question becomes, who's going to get the keys to the kingdom?